Друзья, привет. Всем привет.
Hi friends, hi everybody. I'm a little bit anxious. It's my first time here in Luzhniki, and for me, it's also the cyber sport festival. I was circling around the building. Anyway, first couple slides. I may be very slow, and then I'll pick up the speed. I've been working in Nginx, Deputy CTO, and basically the topics of DDoS and protection from DDoS and web have been involved since 2008, and I wanted to share with you some practical developments and to say how this should be built from our standpoint and in view of the problems, what we do. The year 2022, 3 years ago, 2022, and you remember all these attacks, all those attacks, and basically they should have subsided. But this is not the case. Attacks are persistent, DDoS attacks and attempts of breaking applications, and also we have the new situation right now, which we are seeing, and this is bots. We're going to talk about bots a bit later. When I was sharing this with our engineers and the clients of how to protect applications, I begin with just a baseline. We have to understand what is going on in your network, what kind of transportation protocols and utility protocols. Mostly, we've been working with web, HTTPS, HTTP, and DNS. And the biggest traffic generators, this will be the websites and applications, static content, and video. So working with all these protocols and with all these traffic generators, you can understand of how to build multi-layer, multi-tier defense. Also, we have to understand what kind of attacks may be happening. So this is the diagram. Long time ago, somebody came up with it, but they can all be split into four. All the attacks can be split into four types, and each of them is targeting a certain, like a weak zone. This would be the attacks for the throughput of the channels. They're quite straightforward in terms of how to generate. You can generate big capacities without specific hard equipment or hard software. There are no sessions, and everything is quite just straightforward. 10 gigabit or 100 gigabit can be generated easily. Attacks on network stack any equipment which is holding a session, the router, and where you can build a table. All of this is done in flop. If you're working around with it, if you do not know how to work with this equipment, this would be a vulnerable point. Attacks on apps, on applications, this would be get post and DDoS and loris, exploiting vulnerabilities, and also attacks on business logics like bots and everything, all the new things that we're seeing. And also attacks on the budget. When all of this does not work, you defend it yourself, but you're paying money because you are consuming certain resource, like certain cloud capacities, your service are overloaded, and so on. Again, this happens once in a while. Now, let's begin with DNS, because it's a usual suspect, So one of the examples, 6 million inquiries came on the peak, boom, it was a spike, and then it went. It was not pleasant, it was not nice if you have your own infrastructure where you don't know how to work right with it. So there are two approaches. Number one is to give DNS into the cloud, and secondly, build it in-house in your place. But with DNS, if there is no connection, one inquiry, one response, yes, it could be TCP, but this is not the case of just a regular client. This is a possibility of this spoofing. You're generating any package with any source IP, and you're generating 100 of a gigabit, and you can just buffer any situation. You need infrastructure for that, and so the approach is to give it into the cloud because DNS is commodity service, and the big number of providers can service it on very big request rates of the users, or to build it in-house. If you want to build it in your own, the approach is quite understandable. It's been tried and proven and tested. PGP Minicast is like a 24 network where you have only DNS, and you can re-announce any provider into this network, and this provider, you can set up your communication to defend from the DDoS attacks. Several points of presence, performance and things like that. This will be the baseline for you to be able to build the good DNS structure. Because especially in 2022, now it's less because people are fed up with that and they moved it into the cloud. But back in 2022, we've had a lot of cases when the website simply was not available because DNS did not work, but the application would work still. And a couple more words about how you can do it generated.
And they connect in dozens of them, and you have 30, 100 gigabits, depending from how many servers you do have. In addition to DNS, you have your own infrastructure from which you give away some applications. If you have your own infrastructure, but for example you have got connected protection for some application in the cloud, you can get one single prefix. You enter right database, Async, we have a lot of tools in Async. You have to find one single prefix, one address of this prefix is being sent to amplification. Uplink is loaded, or cloud provider cannot get through to you. So your application is not available. If you want to build it by yourself, then you have to properly divide your application by network so that you will do the re-announcement, BGP Unicast, access points, significant number, and cooperation with operators if you want to protect yourself from network attacks. As for HTTP, well, here's an example that you have connected the cloud protection, you have protected application, web application, and by finding some prefixes, you can send attacks directly to your infrastructure. And there are forgotten handles, there are certain legacy, which can be easily calculated by Async. And simple Google, you can enter around the protection, and you do inaccessible your web application. So you have to understand your public resources, partner interfaces. It's related to e-com with a lot of access points for the partners, admins. This all has to be protected as well. So this is much better with time, and right now we still have some questions. WAF can work pretty well when you have reduced the number of requests to it. It has to be done with statics to a separate domain. It's the best practice. You have separate cookies, domain, and you send a lot of requests to, for example, let's say from cache to CDN, or you can on S3, and you can close the topic that certain request can drop to you in a database in a sense of how you can be pulled down if you be DDoSed. And you might have some rate limiting in your WAF or a check mark from the DDoS. It helps, but in a very specific cases.
WAF просто станет тем самым
Because WAF will be a narrow point that's going to be DDoSed. If you want to do it yourself, if you want to prepare WAF by yourself, there are cases like that when you cannot decrypt the cloud traffic. Think about scaling. Think about some cloud-native approaches so that you could automatically scale infrastructure and everything would be wonderful, even if it's going to be a legitimate spike of traffic. Maybe it's going to be some advertising campaign and legitimate users will come to you. Very often it happens that WAF drops down because they made a post in WhatsApp and people just follow the link and they open the image from advertising. It's a static content and WAF is dropping. People forget about people because safety is a process. It's not an end result that we've installed certain hardware, we have connected certain service, and that's it, and you can forget about it. No, if you want to build it yourself, you need people, you need training, you need regular education. That's why the cloud, in the given case, has a certain advantage, because cloud provider has shared expertise between a lot of protected resources. So please take into consideration that you will also have to do these exercises. And you can practice, you can hit the bag, and then you will be kicked out by some stronger person in the street, because these are different things. And attacks, same thing. Synthetics is synthetics. Real attacks are very complex. Speaking about statics, separate domain, adequate hashing, headers, and people forget about it. Sometimes they put cubes against statics, and it does happen because you have one domain. In the framework of one domain, you are pushing all traffic, and that's bad. Versioning of the objects. You can call objects, you do the roll-up, CI/CD has been rolled up, new version, you change the name of the files, or you add some arguments, and that's it. You may not be afraid of something that has been wrongly cached, and then you can put it to the S3 in the cloud and remove that some addresses will be coming to you from the content. So in your CI/CD, you will do the loading with the content. Same thing with the video. If you're speaking about HTTP streaming, then if this is the WOT content, you forget about S3. If it's a live content, then once again, good practice is to publish into CDN or some cloud and then give it away from the cloud and then forget about this problem. And then levels of scaling of the protection. Well, speaking about that, move from right to left, because very often the way how you organize application, well, it defines what levels do you need. What are the options? On-premise, or you can do it in the cloud. If you have an application and you take WAV in the cloud, WAF, once again, you can keep it on yourself or you can keep it in the cloud. Protection from the bots. For example, I didn't see on-premise solution for protection from bots, and even if you can do a solution for protection from bots and put it into some server, call it on-premise, then it's important to understand. Well, it's labor-intensive, and expertise is very important. Criminals attack your business logic. They analyze your application, and they write scalpers, parsers, and other tools. Protection from DDoS on level 7. Yes, you can do it in the cloud, you can do it on-premise, you can build your own infrastructure, unicast networks, nets, servers, expensive, rich, but then you have to install hardware or in the cloud. And reverse proxy. Everything is proxy to your origination. L3, L3, 4 protection. The network can be done in cloud and on-prem. It can be a combined story, for example, one set of equipment or some divided stories. And cooperation with upper operators. You need specifically year 22. And this was a story when it's not just was difficult, but why should you push traffics to your uplinks when you can go to a higher operator? Please block these and you don't have any headaches. You can also speak about NSP, you can cooperate with them, you can also do it on the level of 3SPU, you can block attacks. And right now I would like to speak a little bit about future, about bots, because this topic is very obvious. It's in the web, in the e-com especially. So it is very important. First of all, what problem do we have? The problem is that we cannot definitely identify a user today. Well, it looks like you can define him by the IP, the classical way, but it doesn't work like that now. Why? Because resident proxies are in Russia, criminals don't need, they're not afraid that they will be blocked from abroad. They just find, and there's a lot of different services which provide proxy in Russia. That's it. IP addresses from Russia, they cannot be blocked. Moreover than that they are from Russia, and they cannot be blocked inside of the country, but they also from the mobile operator network. So proxy in the mobile operator networks, if you will look at the whois, and it cannot be blocked. It's not data center, it's NIVI, it cannot be blocked. You just block IP, and many legitimate users don't get access to the resource. Therefore, there was an opinion that right now IPv6 will come, every island will have a separate address and everything's going to be all right. But I don't really believe it, because the progress of IPv6 implementation is a wave of implementation has met a wall, and I've seen statistics from 2020, and it was a level of like up to 5% progress of implementation in Russia. But in reality, one device will not have one IP address because it's just unsafe. It's going to be not NAT, all users will be NATed. Why? Because why everybody should have this IP? Because it's not safe. HTTP3 and UDP. HTTP3 is a transportation that uses UDP, and this is a new problem. Yes, faster in some cases, yes, less RTT. Everything works wonderful when you switch from network to network, you ride metro, Wi-Fi, etc. But there are new attacks to UDP, and it's unclear what's going to be happening there. Well, there will be some new complexities. And what is realistic right now? On the basis of our experience, when we put in a new client and we start analyzing their traffic by illegitimate, and we did have cases when 50% of requests are just bad bots. There are statistics from foreign companies that most of the internet traffic have been automated. And to you it might seem you have a standard profile, day night, and everything looks okay. However, you have a lot of bots, and you just spend cloud resources and capacities. You pay money for them. Therefore, how it was previously, we detected through the RPS, we do some quality matrices, qualitative and quantitative, and then we block by IP address. Right now, you cannot block by IP address. Quantitative matrix metrics. You cannot look at them because you can take 1,000 of resident proxies, and out of these 1,000 proxies, you can do it little by little. You can parse it, and from the outside, nobody gets over anything. Like as in the previous slide, I've been showing you, this is a video from one of the social networks where they have Chinese people, they have connected a lot of mobile phones, and all these likes and other things, they are automated. So this is a maximum approximation to the human behavior, this story. So it's very hard to detect. You cannot look at the headers because this all can be spoofed to J4 print, can also be changed and modified. Imitation of a human with the consideration of the fact that there are applications which are very simple and imitate pattern of behavior. Well, it is possible. And there should be GIF. Will it work? So when you go to the kitchen and there's a lot of cockroaches. There's a lot of bots and application to the e-com, or maybe some other stories where you can earn money and traffic. And we all know that feedback is being pulled out, auto purchases, self-purchases. This all has been automated. And we had a story that the effect of the bouquet period in fighting with the bots, because why does it happen like that? Because criminals are continuously reversing protection mechanisms. There are active mechanisms of protection, for example, in the clients which are being implemented in the browser, JavaScript. So in mobile application, this is ZTK. They are continuously being reversed. So it doesn't matter what kind of a protection will there be, provider of the protection. It will be disassembled. Western protection is being disassembled. Russian protection is being disassembled. So it brings us back to the slide that on-prem, if you're on-prem, it's not a repeatable story. You should have a team, and you should look at the business logic of application. You should understand of what is happening, and then you should block these bots. What is to be done, and how can you defend yourself? Well, the final point is changing business logic of application, and in our experience, this is very slow. The client comes with a web application and they want to switch it on, let's go, and they want to have a maximum without any investments or changes or investments into development. It's almost impossible to be done because if they have very old legacy and back can drop from 50 requests, it's very difficult to improve. And there are certain recommendations here. What should you think about if you write a new application? As I've told you, it should be cached. You can give most of the requests that can be given from the cache. That's wonderful. You reduce the load. API design.
Публичный вход. Есть у вас админка. You
have admin, you have some partnership stories, everything has been separated, different domains, different flows. You can give it to different clouds. One can be go from mainframe, another through the cloud. We can reroute it. Most of the people don't know what's happening with their application. How do you see that? What is the problem? It's unclear, because basically speaking, the blog is not written, not enough of information. Legacy, forgotten handles. For example, they forgot some old handle, an old version. And criminal has already written everything to it, parsed everything, goes to the back door, and you know nothing about that. Cookies of domains for statics, that's it. This particular point works pretty well, but not everybody can afford it.
опыт клиента, да, когда мы, допустим, без регистрации.
We should look at the client's requests if we want to purchase something without registration. And this is an opportunity for the bots, because you should not
Какое-то
do
количество действий, по
a
которым
certain
тебе
amount
могут
of
определить, как бот,
actions
не бот,
about which
то
you can be defined as bot or not bot, to some login, registration. For example, there was a case when one large air operator decided to solve their problem with booking seats, doing it in such a simple way so that you can select a seat only after you have purchased a ticket. Yes, it's inconvenient. I'm flying with a family. I bought 3 tickets. I will sit in 3 different places. I don't know. But this is how they decided and solved their problem. We need some flexible approach. Look at the problem from a new angle. Collect telemetric information from the users. For example, if you have application, mobile application, site,
собираете телеметрию,
and you collect telemetric information, at least any telemetric information, that's going to help you. And you can define matrices for legitimate behavior on your sites. For example, you think that the user
количество
should
запросов делать там
have not more than that many requests for products or other things in the course of the day, and then give correct stop code if you think that that's enough.
поможете. И даже если у вас будет стоять on-prem решение какое-то,
Even if you will have an on-prem solution which builds matrices on the basis of those basic status codes, or if it's going to be a cloud, it's going to be much simpler for them to understand that it's not legitimate.
Итоги.
Results.
Первый
Summing up,
слайд — это
the first slide.
оценить риски, вот это все.
Evaluate risks, risk assessment, then administrative, which is very boring. However, it should be there. Risk assessment, define what is to be protected, select the way of delivery, cloud, on-prem, and both have the right to exist. There's a company, there are guests, which are subject to regulators. They should follow the requirements. They cannot just give the cloud, and we have to build infrastructure. Therefore, the stories can be different. You should select them for your cases. Invest into observability in order to understand what happens with your applications and infrastructure and business logic. Safe development. This is everything for us. Well, that's the end of my presentation. Subscribe to my channel, and this QR code is for free testing. Thank you.